I remember the world, what is it? The War of the Worlds, Katie, when that aired on radio, people lost their mind. They thought it was
Yeah.
so real, and they were convinced that something was happening. And that was a lesson not only to the US government, but for people within ufology as well, or interested in it, that we could be easily deceived. And it wasn't meant as a psyop, but it sure worked well. And I'm sure the CIA picked up some information from that. Our guest today, guys, is Dean Alioto. If you are not familiar with Dean, he is an award winning filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. He's worked on series, directed, produced tons of stuff. He's won a lot of awards. I can't list them now because I got a ton of other stuff I listed for him. But he came out with the McPherson tape. Well, I didn't say he came out, he created a tape that was very artsy, very, traumatic for some people to watch when they first seen it because nothing had ever been done like that. It was the Blair Witch of ufology. It had never been done. Nobody had ever seen an audio or visual like this. It was brilliantly done, and we'll let Dean, of course, explain what that is for those of you who don't know what it is or haven't seen the tape yet. But it showed a weakness again in ufology, which is our willingness to wanting to believe so much that we're willing to put our foot in the ground, say no, this is real, even when the maker of the project said, look, this was fake from the onset. Like, this was not meant to go viral in the age where things didn't go viral back then. 1993 wasn't, a computer was far away from being in a domestic home back then. So, Dean, I thank you so much for joining us on UAP Studies. We're going to learn a lot from you today, my man.
Jason, thank you for having me.
This is something that I think for any of the listeners that know about the McPherson tapes and have listened to you before in other podcasts, as you talked about probably at nauseum at this point,
As I've
but
drone
it's,
on about it,
yeah,
yes.
you're a bit of an expert about it at this point, right? But it's important that I want to start there. We're going to move to, more present time stuff, but I want to start there because this project was just something that you were mentioning when you were younger, but it affected the community, still does now, still has ripples in the behavior that we had over this tape, myself included. So maybe start about maybe the start of your career and how this project even came about being.
Sure. I'd always been interested in UFOs and paranormal in general. And so uh, the two films that really affected me, three films really affected me and pushed me into that profession was Star Wars, which it's all aliens. Second one was Close Encounters, which came out 6 months later. And just phenomenal. It showed the world the spiritual side of the phenomenon, which hasn't been replicated, as far as I'm concerned, in any other film. And then when I saw E.T. again, more spiritualness, more communal. That film was the film that was kind of my gateway drug because I remember at the time seeing it, I was the messed up middle child. I was totally Elliot, dreaming of UFOs, and and my mother was raising three kids on her own, and so I saw this film and I'm seeing this broken home at the beginning, and then I'm seeing that it isn't broken, it's special, and so I just thought, well, that is the most powerful thing I've ever seen. So I came home and I told my mother, that's it, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And so I didn't know how to do that. Back then, we're talking I'm going to date myself here, but we're talking early 80s. There weren't a whole bunch of books out for filmmaking. And so it was really kind of just watching films, man. And the thing is, the way that I grew up, we didn't have a selection. It wasn't like a la carte where you could pick, oh, I just like action films. I'm just going to watch action films. You watch whatever was served and you were grateful. So
Yeah.
you would see, old film noir films. You would see Lawrence of Arabia, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. So you had a wide range that you got that people today inherently don't get unless they really seek that out. So anyway, I at that moment, I thought, well, film school and Spielberg and Lucas were blowing up and everyone was hearing about their journey. And so if you were starting to do anything like the Beatles did this, they reverse engineered. How did Chuck Berry become so, amazing and gifted? What was, you know, what was his journey? And so for me, it was okay. And the first book I got was Scorsese, The First Decade. So I looked at that and I saw how he charted and did his thing. And so it seemed like film school was it. And so I tried to get into USC, but I had horrible grades. I'm a bit dyslexic. And but I got into San Francisco State University film program and did that. And then for 6 months, the workload was so intense, and I hadn't known that I was dyslexic yet. It was too much. It was overpowering. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to take film classes at USC. So I went to USC and took film classes there, and then by taking extension classes. And then after that, I was left with this brief period where I had to make my first film in order to like continue reverse engineering these filmmakers, right? And so the thing that most affected me was this at the time when I was looking for material was, well, first of all, there were no DSLR cameras. So you could only, shoot for a movie, quote unquote, official movie, 60 millimeter or 35, which cost wise was prohibitive for, a young kid. So I thought, well, I was doing wedding videos with a buddy of mine. And I thought, well, what if I do a video where something really jacked up happens? And I've been reading Whitley Strieber's book, Communion, at the time. And that scared the hell out of me more than any other, book, including Stephen King novels, which I love. And I went, how would I take the audience and insert them into this in a way that hasn't been done before? And so I came up with the idea of doing I didn't call it a found footage film, but it was just this girl's 5-year-old birthday party. And one of the family members, 16 years old, he gets a new camera and he's going to be shooting everything because it's a new camera. And he's like, and back then it was such a novelty. There was Super 8 and you had, video. So anyway, we shot this thing in 89, 88, 89, and did it all in one take, all improvised. And it was all based on drawings from experiencers. And so I tried to stick to the narrative as much as I could to make it as visceral and real as possible. But two things came out of that. One was it was a little too effective. Mm-hmm. The other is that the people who I was trying to impress with it, filmmakers and even the casting director whose own son, her son was in the film playing the middle child there, Jason. She saw it in early cut and she hated it and eviscerated me and said, people are talking over each other. It's all handheld. It's just amateur hour of the worst order. And so I thought I made a piece of crap because I thought, well, no one's getting the cinema verite thing that I'm trying to do here. So I wrote it off. We had a screen in San Francisco where Jacques Vallée was there. Jacques loved it. And so that was good. And then we went to get it distributed. And the long story short is the distribution company burned to the ground. And we lost our main master artwork only a few months after it was released. So I thought, well, that was it. And I went on about my life, working on crime shows, moved from San Francisco to LA. And then I get a call from this guy, Sean David Morton, this character. And he said, hey, I just came back from the International UFO Congress Convention where your movie was screened, and people believe that it's actually real, and they want to track down who found this footage from the family. And I chuckled and said, well, no one found it. We made it. And he says, okay, do you know what's been going on? I go, no. Who the hell are you? So he tells me, and he says it just played, and Lieutenant Colonel Don Ware, Air Force intelligence, 40 years of experience, claimed it was authentic, and that was it. That was the seal of approval. So Unsolved Mysteries and all these shows wanted to, me to go on it. And I wanted to go on it to debunk it. So I went on this Fox show called Encounters, and they did a 6.5 minute segment on it. And so that was it. And I thought, well, time to move on. And then I ended up remaking it for UPN as their first TV movie. And then when the internet happened, it was like, is this real or not? And then there was a conspiracy that I made the second one, that the conspiracy theorists were willing to say, okay, he made the second one, but not the first. And the government hired him to make the second one to throw people off the authenticity of the first one, which I thought was just a little too complicated for a conspiracy theory. But anyway, And so that was it. And then I just kind of moved on with my life, making movies and stuff. And then Alejandro Rojas said, "Hey, do you want to come back out and show the film for the anniversary of the film?" And I was a little nervous at first because I don't really at the time didn't know the UFO community.
Right.
So I went ahead, and the audience was great, and they rolled with the levity of it because I don't take myself serious, as you can tell, but I take my work serious. And so that started a whole new resurgence. And so there's two parallel things. There's the UFO community that have been following this, and then there's the found footage horror people that follow this and dig it. And we just discovered that Screen Rant today listed the film, the McPherson Tape, as the top 10 quote best found footage movie in the last 100 years. I don't know that they made found footage films for the past 100 years. I'm pretty sure
yeah,
it started in the 80s.
This one's from Hitler. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best one. He and his dog. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So that's what brought me here, and that's the brief version of what got me pulled back in here.
Nice, Kate. Oh, your mic, Katie. You're still on mute.
I said, it's nice to meet you, Dean. Thank you for being here. So
Likewise,
I'm really
Katie.
curious. I mean, the entertainment business, documentaries, film, it's such a balance of, feeding people realistic. I mean, even Skinwalker Ranch, Beyond Skinwalker, these series that we see on television. How and especially when it comes to experiencers, and I know some of your projects have dealt exclusively around the experiencers, and for some reason it always seems to be, well, between the experiencers and the animal mutilations, the things that are really hard for people to grapple and accept and believe. What do you think, how do you balance telling like true testimony from experiencers and entertainment? How do you walk that line? And what have been the most compelling experiencer testimonies that you yourself have like give more credibility to?
Well, the first thing I do is I take them by the hand and we go to the bunker, and I show them the exhibits of aliens from Roswell, and I just go, no, I for me, it's, first of all, I'm a filmmaker first and foremost.
Right.
I started, and I've done docs, science docs, history docs, westerns and stuff. And so I'm not partial to just doing one side of it. I'm more interested in the story and the muse, whatever the muse tells me to make a movie about, I'm going to try to listen and do my best job. So when I went to the UFO convention in 2018, I met a lot of credible people, experiencers, and I also met people, professors from like Montana Tech and NYU, that were doing some pretty amazing hypotheticals that if this is real, what would it be like? And so I started to think of this more as, okay, the general public needs kind of a primer for this because the well is so deep. And so I thought, all right, what if I did a documentary on the UFO phenomenon? But the first thing is, how would I approach it different? I know that I would hopefully bring a new production value level to that, but how would I approach it differently? And usually what you do as a filmmaker or a storyteller, you look and you see what everyone else is doing and then you run to the other side. So everyone else by default is making movies about aliens, documentaries from the human's perspective, because that's all we have to go on. I thought, what if we did it from the aliens' perspective as a hypothetical? What could be gleaned from that? And so I was able to pull in, Michio Kaku and all these great people and some celebrities like Dave Foley and Alan Tudyk, and have them comment on it. And so it just sucked me in. I was going to do one documentary, 15 interviews, and it ended up being 68 interviews and 4 documentaries. I couldn't fit it all into one. So that's how the alien perspective came about. And then the follow-up, which is Life Beyond Earth. And then I'm dropping at Contact in the Desert, the experiencers. So sorry, I'm shotgunning all over the place, but basically that's what it was. It was just this need to get information and to see things. Like as a fictional filmmaker, Many times I go and it takes me 2 hours to find a movie to watch. I'm very specific. I've seen things. And if I don't find it, but I'm looking for a type of movie, I'll start outlining or writing. And that's the impetus for my work is, I want to see things that don't exist.
Nice.
Oh,
It can't be
interesting.
the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Reality.
Yeah. And to answer the final question there, Katie, boy, there's a lot of cases that are compelling. Um, Debbie Jordan Cobble,
Mhm. Yeah.
her case is fantastic, really interesting with being pregnant and then not being pregnant. Um, and we cover that in my new documentary. Of course, Travis Walton, Terry Lovelace. Um, there's a lot of seminal cases. I think if we're referring to the ones that are less credible, these are the people who might have had something interesting happen. But there's a dynamic that people don't like to talk about. I don't have a problem talking about it, which is they want to go back to the well. They want to extend their 15 minutes of fame, if you will.
Yeah.
These people start to create things and go off script in the narrative. They want to be someone who's got that limelight. And it's really not about that. These experiencers, I've been to experiencer support groups, several. I was one of the first crews to be allowed to film in there. And I can tell you, these people aren't terribly excited about rushing out and getting on the news with what they're dealing with because they have legitimate PTSD. So, do they want to be mocked? And they all have professions that are like one of them has done TED Talks. Another one's a doctor, one's a lawyer, and one's a Homeland Security, Homeland supervisor. So you know, I look for the cases where people aren't rushing to tell me. They're like, hey, I want to tell you this thing because it really affected me and I just want to get your take on it. And so, yeah, there's too many to count, to be honest.
It's an amazing position to be in as well. I know a lot of people within the Defense Department are experiencers. I think Sarah Gam is an experiencer from childhood, and she's never hid about it. And the government, the Defense Department, knew about it. They still hired her. Jim Semivan worked for the CIA. He had abduction occurrence or two happen while he's working for the CIA. So it's not just the average folk, it's everyone. And this includes people in politics. There could be politicians that this affects. We can't nail it down to the type of people that this happens to, except for characteristics of the person, but there's no physical trait as to why that specific person. What I appreciate about you is that you didn't do what so many other people have done, is grab something that is fake, make a cult about it, and then a following only to, later be found to be a fraud. You didn't do that from the onset. You've been straight, and you're looking for the truth as much as anybody else. And your position is unique because you had no intention in 1989 that you'd be sitting here in 2026
No.
talking about UFOs. That was not, and be very well known for it. That was not your intention. It was the same thing with George Knapp. He had no intention of being known as a UFO journalist, and yet it happened. And it's almost like it's comedic, but it's also like you're destined for it somehow. It's so weird. Uh, as far as just maybe the transition from the filmmaking to now looking at it as, human perspective, you're a filmmaker, but you're still having a human connection to what these people are saying. How do you, this is a hard one to ask, but how do you separate the way you feel versus the story or what facts you can actually prove for the documentary? Because I think it would affect my work. I would want to make it, more real to the viewer if I'm emotionally attached to it. But how do you do that when kill your darlings?
Yeah. If you've been writing for a long enough time, you've killed so many darlings, you could be accused of being a serial killer. And you have to. That's a good question. For me, it's really kind of separated into two categories. There's the documentaries that I tell, if you will. And as an example, when you see the alien perspective, The first one, I don't get into abductions. We start at NASA and we end up at Caltech, where we're analyzing some material that is reported to be exotic, not from here. And then the second one, we touch base a little bit. We get into downloads, alien, downloads, if you will, and so those are the first two, and it's meant to be taking people, because again, for me, I've got to service two masters. One is the UFO community, who's razor sharp on these things, and hopefully there's more critical thinking that's gone on where they look and do research. I mean, that's what Google is for, and to see what's real and what isn't. And then the other bigger audience is the one that's the most important, which is those people that are, for lack of a better word, bi UFO curious, right? Who want to, they're interested in this. They don't know anything really about this. So I have to hit both. I have to have mic drops for people in the UFO community who are like, yeah, show me something I haven't seen before, dude. That's important. But also, again, guiding everyone through, how we got here. And so the first documentary focuses on where would they be coming from? And the second one is, why are they coming here? And in the third one, which is its own separate thing, it's called the experiencers. We get into everything. We get into abductions hardcore. We get into the hybrid program. It's so when we're talking about people that have had these experiences and what the commonalities are, the last documentary I'm doing is on John Mack.
Nice.
And then that's it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm never doing another UFO documentary.
Oh, really?
And it's not, yeah. And it's not because I'm just tired of it. I've done enough, blah, blah. It isn't. It's because I won't have anything more to say. I am wringing the sponge from my, and I've been, I like to say, armchair consumer, not armchair expert, my whole life. And then the past decade, I've been hardcore in this and seen things and interviewed and witnessed things. And this is the collection of the best that for me, I would want to see in order to fully understand the phenomenon. And so I don't think I'm going to have anything else to say unless someone says, hey, guess what just crashed in my backyard? And there are these two, 3.5 foot tall grays are reptilians. Can you, come out? Then I'll come out. But shy of that, I feel like everything's leading to tee up to the experiencers. And for me, these are the people that need the most attention. I'm done with the UFO hearings, right? Give me an alien tailpipe, I like to joke, plop that on the desk of the next hearing, and I'm in for it. Show me a piece of, alien, body. Yeah. Okay, that's next level. But no one is asking at these hearings, not one. Why are they coming here? Are they interacting with humans? And the answer is yes. So the experiencers need to have a seat at the table. And so hopefully these next two films that I'm doing is going to dislodge that iron grip on the nuts and bolts and open it up. And a good friend of mine, Earl Grey Anderson, passed away. The new movie is dedicated to him because he was an experiencer, second generation. And, he was someone who helped educate me when I got into this. So, and Yvonne Smith she's featured heavily in this new documentary. And getting back to your comment about, why are you doing this? Why do people fall into this? I kept telling her, saying, I'm not an experiencer. I've never had missing time that I'm aware of. I've never seen a UFO. My mother has, but I haven't. Why am I doing this? Why am I so compelled? I've never worked this hard, this long on any subject. And she laughed at me and said, Dean, they don't have to knock on your door to get to you. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay, that's not scary. So I'm being of service without knowing that the reason why I'm being of service. But anyway.
Something I personally struggle with is when we try to put human perspective on ET agenda. And, I love Earl Grey. We're going to work on a project together. And boy, what a loss to the community there. And Yvonne Smith, too, amazing work. But even within our own community, we have different camps where, some, say that they have a negative or evil agenda, maybe evil, use that term lightly. And others say, nope, it's all love and light, you know. And so how have you been able to kind of put out there for documentaries and public what the ET agenda is? And can you give us maybe what you personally think the ET agenda might be? And how do you navigate, good versus evil, or is it just a mixed bag and some are good, some are not so good? Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So my belief system around this is that any intelligence has good and bad.
Mm.
Um, people talk about the reptilians, the mantises, which come up in my doc, um, uh, in my next two docs, in both of them actually. My feeling is that if you're that advanced, there's only so much, you can. There's only so much damage you're going to do to another species. The prime directive of like Star Trek, which by the way was broken every episode. Prime directive, you're not supposed to interact with them. They were doing that. Kirk
Captain
was like,
Kirk did not care. He
dude, he was
banged
hooking up with
everyone.
everything,
Yeah.
green women, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my feeling is that we are really looking at an advanced species, and this advanced species, like if I had to park it somewhere, I'm open to everything. Um, is you have to be is that they're most likely coming from the future. Michael Masters, who I've known since 2019, and he's in like pretty much all of my docs. His analytics of seeing where we came and where we're evolving to, we are headed there. And right now, less people are having children because of smartphones, technology, and all the distractions, and which is creating social awkwardness among younger generations. And so if we don't have a big enough gene pool, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to have some people playing the banjos from Deliverance. So you would come back and you would grab a gene sampling. I mean, if like Einstein allowed for the idea that we could create time travel, right? So if that's going to happen at all, then it is happening. If it's a possibility, it is happening. So I think that what they may be doing is fighting for themselves, which is really fighting for us with regards to the hybrid program and everything else going on. Dr. Mack points out something interesting, which is there is a belief among a lot of experiencers. It's called dual alien identity, I believe it is. And excuse me if I mispronounce that, my dyslexia. But it basically means that these experiencers have agreed. They come into this incarnation agreeing to do this. And so when these experiencers will fight back and say, you have no right to do this, what do the aliens, they've been quoted as saying,
right.
We have every right. So it's interesting. That's not to be taken lightly. But there's also a lot of contradictions in the UFO narrative, the experiencer narrative. One of them is that people like to say all the technology that we have, the most advanced technology like fiber optics, that all came from them. And I go, them? You mean aliens? Yes, it came from them. Then why are the aliens, one of the things that they always say, why are they saying that your technology isn't helping you? Your technology, not our technology that we gave you, isn't helping you. And why would you give people who are having technology issues more technology? Makes no sense. So the idea of donating a UFO to these humans who still haven't figured out a way to live together peacefully makes zero sense. So there are some contradictions that need to be remedied. And I love kind of looking at that and going, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. And again, trying to simplify it. If you're from the future or you're from another planet, you would come here because we do that. We do it with less evolved tribes and stuff. So to park it with either they're evil or this or that. I know that there's a lot of military people. Lou Elizondo told me, and he's mentioned this on several shows, um, that some of the generals that he gave briefings to would come up and say, "You're doing God's work. Thank you." And other ones would come up and say, "You do know they're demons, right?
Yeah. It,
What are you going to do?"
and that's the interesting part that I think we're kind of looking at least in 2026, because we see the evil that is being basically exposed, and it's molding through, the ground now. We're seeing how bad people can really be. And we know good and evil exists. And, you don't need to be taught that. You know what feels good, what feels bad. So, when they say, well, they're aliens and some of them are nice and some of them are not. Okay, well, we have that duality of good versus evil again, right? Like the angels and the demons, and that is getting mixed in with ufology. What I'm not saying that they should be apart, but at least
Mm-hmm.
when we're looking at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, it's interesting. That these visitations happen through lineages of families, and when they say, well, they walk among us, what are they saying? They walk among us like it's an agent, like they're fully aware that they're an alien and they're walking around at the grocery store fooling us, or that they're not even consciously aware that they're a hybrid, that they go about their day like everybody else. They just once in a while get taken. It's an upload. They grab the information they need, send them back down. We don't know. But it's interesting to start looking at that, because if you've had a long time to integrate yourself into the population, it's easier for disclosure because now you have a middleman in between, right? I don't think two species can just come and cooperate. They will not understand one another no matter how hard they try. But if you have a middleman, it merges it together like the Trinity, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? Again, there's symbolisms there, but and I think that may be the fact. I think that that's what is weird about right now is understanding, okay, well, maybe this does have something to do with spiritualism. And I'm just wondering from your perspective, Dean, like, do you think there's any validity? I'm not saying a specific denomination or religion, but do you think there's a spiritual aspect to all of this that we're greatly ignoring?
100%. 100%. Um, the bigger picture is this. Um, I believe that we're all part of source. I don't believe in excuse the being crude, but I don't believe in a God with testicles and a beard. What would he need with testicles? I'm lost. I'm confused. What would he need with facial hair? I mean, it looks great. And Charlton Heston, rocked the hell out of that
Hold it
when he
off.
was playing.
Hold it off.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But it doesn't resonate. Everything comes from somewhere. Everything has energy, which means that everything has a consciousness. And so for me, I look at the source as being this loving thing that is this creator. It's created. We all come from it. Like Lucas is the force, penetrates us, binds us, the galaxy together. And so I believe I'm more altruistic in my beliefs that we are, um, again, I should say earlier, my background was I was really into, when I talk about spirituality, I was into like the Tibetan belief system, reincarnation, all that seemed to resonate with me. There's a thing called xenoglossy. It's an actual term where kids are born being able to speak another language. And kids goes to a piano and starts playing, never touched a piano before. Is that residual from a past life? Probably. And so there's no way that I think we get it right, where you see someone who is a drug addict living under an overpass whose parents were both crackheads and their genetics are jacked up. That's the only shot that that person gets. And if they can't, I don't know. It's a whole bigger question. I was just talking about this with my girlfriend, that you look at what happens with dogs, just to say dogs. Okay. You got a pit bull. Pit bull goes off instincts. Pit bulls, other dogs have done this as well, but we hear the reports of it more so with pit bulls, have killed babies, killed children. Do they go to hell? Is there a hell for that? No. If we're born with these instincts and we're capable of doing these things, I believe that hell is when you die. And near death people, they push this narrative all the time. They say, I go back and I look at all the crappy things that I did from the person's perspective that I did it to. It's all about perspective. If you were in a store and you got into an argument with someone, you know, they cut in line or whatever, and you're yelling at them, in that moment, if you could switch bodies with them and feel that, you're not doing that. So we're too still selfish in certain ways. And so for me, ultimately, I feel like we've got to get to that place where everyone is looking like it's a hive mentality. We're all the same. And we are going to get there evolving. But what is going on right now is you can pick your truth. You can pick whatever, you know, you want. And
It's a free for
so
all now.
it's a free for all, man. And so like I had a buddy of mine who we've broken off contact because he went on and on about something that I don't put a lot of stock in. I didn't put as much stock in it as he wanted me to, let's say. And that is that we don't pick the presidents, that there's a cabal that picks the president. And I'm like, okay, this has been debunked a million times in a million different ways. But let's just start with the people who are counting the chads, counting all the votes, each county. So they would have to know what their tally is. And then that would get ignored. And none of these people are coming saying, hey, hold on, that doesn't match what we had here. The scale for this cover up to happen doesn't make any sense. Plus, the people who are predominantly in this power position, who are the wealthy, top elite, they would probably want a Republican because Republicans represent all that, all the things that have gone through, that have pushed through, that have made it easier, tax breaks and everything have been it. So why would you allow Obama to come in? Why Clinton? So there's a certain baseline that I need to know that if I'm dealing with someone, that they can accept reality, because there's enough real horrors going on. Please, let's not start with the fact that there's some, you know, cabal that's doing that. Travis Walton always says, the phenomenon is strange enough. You don't need to create things beyond that. And when I hear stuff about aliens eating souls, I'm like, what does it taste like? Does it taste like chicken? Why would you eat a soul? And you could eat a soul of maybe a plant. It makes no sense. And so for me, the only way that I can breathe is in knowing that our souls are all equal. So we might be primitive and everything, but on the other side, man, it's all equal, even Stevens. And so I think Earth is one big education, one big school, and we're learning and evolving. But the problem is AI is the great disruptor. Everything else is byproducts of manipulation and who screams the loudest. So sorry, that was a long.
No, do you think we're losing our way? Humanity is losing its way because of AI? I mean, back on the Rocky Mountain Ranch, you know, where I spent time as a child, there were reported to have two types of ETs there, the blonde, blue-eyed Nordics, and these tubby guys that Paul Giamatti labeled the tubby guys that were more AI robotic types, right? And I feel like in the reports, it said they were in conflict with one another. And intuitively, the way I take that is meaning there may be extraterrestrials out there that don't want us to go down this path of AI and where we're headed, and maybe others do. Do you think that's going on, and are we losing our way with AI? We don't know what's real anymore, what's fake.
We don't. And so the problem, well, here's the hopeful way to look at this. There are more advanced species in us. We're 4 billion years late to the game, right? Maybe more. So it's not that these species are maybe 100, years or thousands or tens of thousands or millions. They could be billions of years more advanced than us, but they survived. The fact that they survived means that they were able to come up with safeguards. I was on a panel with Richard Dolan, and we were talking about this, and he was saying, I think that there would be safeguards that they've advanced, that they've figured out ways to safeguard this stuff. And I posited, well, maybe it's not that as much as they matured to the point that they don't need to have a cap over an outlet to know I shouldn't stick my finger in it. So I really don't think that if they're these advanced species, that they're these evil, insidious things that are doing that. I think what we're embarking on is we've created a new intelligence. Deep Prasad, who's a brilliant mind, who's also going to be at Contact in the Desert. He and I were just talking about this 2 days ago, how he believes that there is a new alien that's here living among us, and it is AI. We have now created an intelligence that surpasses us and will continue to. That's never happened in the history of mankind. The printing press never told us what it wanted to print, or never offered, you can come up with a whole new whatever. We have something we've created that is smarter than us. And at some point, it might grow tired of us. And you look at how the algorithms for this thing is, if you're negative in everything, these AIs are starting to show emotions. They're starting to because it's mirroring, it's starting to see things that they need to, like self-preservation, stuff like that. That's terrifying. And I don't want to be an alarmist because I'm not that type of person, but Deep and some other people are working on ways to figure out, workarounds to this. That is super important. But there is a faction of people, Sam Altman and stuff, these guys that are creating this, and you get the sense that they're doing it because it's like, we know it's going to happen anyway. We just want to be the ones that do it. How baller is that? We're going to go down in history. You're going to go down, and so is history. There will be no record of you, dude. There'll be none. Because if AI were to take over, again, taking this to the worst case scenario, like James Cameron, Terminator, you think that they're going to preserve our history and go, hey, young spry robot, take a look at what the species that was here before us.
I don't believe in humans.
Yeah.
I've never seen one. But,
Yeah.
You bring up a good point about, the AI stuff. And Katie and I, we always talk about, the threat of it, because it's the people that are artistic and abled, talented versus the people that are not talented. And now they think that they're equal to the 10,000 plus hours somebody's put into knowing how to draw. Now the person can just type in and get the image that they want. So an artist is, nobody's going to buy your art anymore. You're not special. I could create whatever I want. And it takes us further and further away from, I look at a painting, I get emotional because there's just a connectivity between me and a painting. There's no digital device between me. This was somebody who labored and put in, they could get art does that, music does that, but now it emulates it. Like I have tunes that I've heard AI do, and I'm like, I hate it because I love it so much. Like it is so
Spotify's
good.
creating their own artists. They're creating them with names and with images. They look like a person, and they're putting music out, and some of these things are becoming hits. And now all of the money goes to them.
Yeah.
So
So a
it's
content creator,
capitalism.
yeah, a content creator has an AI, will prompt it to come up with a song. He posts it. It's a hit. He makes money off of free.
Yeah.
It's basically, and then you'll have podcasts, filmmakers, all that who are just struggling for, anybody to pay attention to what they're trying to focus on. And, it's not flashy. It doesn't have my attention. It's got to remain under 2 seconds for me to keep attention to it. Otherwise, it's too long, boring. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's happening to us. Our attention span is going down. The slogan of the podcast is, are you paying attention? Because if you are, you realize, you're being ripped off, not only of your time, but your mental energy, your capabilities, the ability to learn, all that disappears with AI. And you guys bring
Yeah.
up that, do you think maybe that's why because you're talking about Paul Masters and, maybe the time travelers, there's never any art or music in these crafts. Like it's always just plain Jane White because there's no artists amongst them. Maybe they could see it, with all the implants they got. They see artwork and writing everywhere, but to us, it's just plain Jane. It looks like nothing. Do you think maybe that's what happened? They just evolved past art?
That's interesting. I like to ask the question, who made the table that the experiencers are lying on? And do they have a union?
Oh,
What are their breaks like? Do they go on vacation? What, I'm curious about the pedestrian things. That's why, like, when I would interview experiencers, I'd say, were there any smells? What was the temperature like? I want to include all the other senses in the descriptors. And so that's a really good point. Is there isn't any art? I mean, but when you go into a doctor's operating room, there is no art, right? Maybe there is, in case of fire, pull this alarm, you know, sign up, but there isn't. So, but I'm really curious. At the end of the day, where are these aliens retiring to?
Mm.
If they're drones, worker bees, then But the thing is, if they were just robots and they created them so that we wouldn't be completely freaked out, I'm like, okay, well, then they should all look like the Nordics because these gray guys are pretty damn
Hot.
freaky. And at
Yeah.
3.5 to 4 feet, what's that all about? And then you've got the 6 feet tall ones. And sometimes the skin is considered, sometimes described as being pink and sometimes it's gray. So that's really interesting, man.
We just call them the hot ones.
Yeah, but they do, exactly. They do seem to have a sense of humor, though.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
ironic. Betty Hill, she talks about, here, take a look at the map. Where are you? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know where you are, how would you know where we are if
How am
I
I going to
showed you?
explain it to you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Getting back to kind of the new, like Jason was saying, there's a connection between the artist's hand and now where do you draw the line and how has that affected your filmmaking, your document? Like just last night I was putting together my presentation for Contact and yeah, I'm using AI to generate some images for me because they're consistent, they're nice. How has that affected your process and where do you draw the line as far as utilizing AI capabilities because it's so easy to do and it's so great, you know?
It's a tough choice that all these filmmakers are having to ask themselves right now. But the fact is that it's already over with regards to regulating AI as an art form. That is lost. When Disney pays $1.8 billion and Bob Iger pays that to get this technology, when Ben Affleck, who's slamming AI, and then all of a sudden, wow, he just sold his own AI company that he's got his hand in, that he's a part of, for $600 million.
Whoa.
So it's to Netflix. So it's over. And so the question is, like documentaries are still going to continue because we want to hear the actual people, and we're not going to be able to. I don't think we will stomach having AI representation of certain people. But when it comes to movies, what it kind of does is this. So right now, the separation between studio films and independent films, there's only two things that define that separation. One is name actors versus your little indie film that stars your dentist. The other is special effects. And so when you look at a Marvel film, everything that you've seen, the best Marvel film, all of those effects can be now replicated. So the difference between having 350 million to do Endgame Marvel movie and some guy in their basement is in replicating that, which they can now, pretty close, and it's going to get closer every 6 months, is the story. Now we are using AI to create stories. That is happening. And people are writing books constantly in all subject matters and kicking them out on Amazon. It's a huge, huge issue that they're dealing with right now. And so it comes down to the story behind this. If I have a computer write something, I'm going out and I'm saying, yeah, I have this thing. That's not very interesting. I have a film that hopefully is coming out in theaters this year. That's about podcasting. It's called The Last Podcast. Now, the movie itself hopefully is entertaining, fun. It's a dark comedy. But how it came about is also part of that experience, which is I filled in for a buddy of mine, Martin Willis, on podcast UFO for a month or two while he had heart surgery. And unfortunately, I was encouraged to start my own podcast. So I went down that rabbit hole and spent almost 6 months. And I wanted to make sure when I came out of the gate, I had 100,000 subscribers and I did this right. And I was being very, very ambitious about it. And I like to tell the story where my girlfriend looks over at me across the room, sees me at my desk, Friday, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing my homework to create this, this podcast. I've got to brand it. I've got to get the name and blah, blah." And she's like, "No, why are you doing this?" And I said, "Well, it's going to be fun, right?" And she says, "Yeah, babe, doesn't look fun to me." And I thought about it for a second. I went, yeah, F this. This is all the wrong reasons to be doing this. People
You know
should be
what?
doing it for
He's
the
right,
reasons you guys
Katie.
are. Yeah.
This is our last episode.
Yeah, exactly. So I ripped the bandage off, ripped the power cord, flatlined myself on that because that wasn't what I'm supposed to be doing. And taking that and turning that into a story really affected the nuances of that story that you wouldn't get from an AI, I would hope or would think. And so it's going to be equally important how these stories were created. The muse, working with the muse to create these, then just saying, oh, I wrote in this prompt. I said, make me something that's a film like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid meets Godzilla. And this is what I got. Isn't that cool? No one's going to give a shit. Excuse my French. But so I think that is still going to continue. And also, people want to see real humans. They want to see actors. I don't know that that's going to go away. I think for me, when I think about the perfect usage of AI, and I've used it in some of my docs, is I'm creating specific things based on IP that I already have, or photographs that I already have that I want to show another dimension to them. And so now I am using it in concert with that, but it's something that I control. And for me, that's where I draw the line.
So a tool. You use it as a tool.
As a tool. Yeah, because you can't
Got it.
say you can't use this tool anymore. Everyone else is going to be using it. And so what? It'll be only the studios that are using this? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. What am I, a purist? I'm just going to stick to the art form. And,
Yeah.
I keep thinking, like, if you could recreate the Lord of the Rings, because Katie and I are big fans of Lord of the Rings, but if you could recreate the Lord of the Rings now with AI the way it is, like, you could probably do a way better production and faster, a fraction of the time and cost that Peter Jackson did back in 1999. And it's insane that just one program could replace an entire industry or people's jobs like overnight. All the people that did these special effects, they're all losing their jobs. Like,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
the problem with AI. It's so easy to just jump on the bandwagon and, like, okay, but who's that affecting? Right. And that's the dangerous
Right.
part.
And
And if
Affleck
anything,
says,
yeah,
yeah. No, go ahead.
go ahead. I cut you off there.
No. I interrupted you. I was just saying, was going to further underscore that Ben Affleck said, "Oh no, this is technology that is like cleaning up wires when you're like hanging actors on sets and stuff and all that stuff." And I'm like, "No, it isn't, dude. You don't pay over $500 million to remove wires when I have an app that I can do that in Final or Cut Pro or excuse me, I use DaVinci Resolve. Come on, it's like don't be insulting, dude." And so those are the proper ways to utilize that, but it's again, it's the people. It's like Viggo Mortensen. I mean, you're not going to create an
Hello.
AI version of that, dude. Not going to
Yeah.
happen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
So,
feel the same. It wouldn't feel the same. In fact, last night, I don't remember, it was one of the top movies right now on Netflix. And I got like 15 minutes in, and it felt like the military vehicles were AI generated. They didn't feel the same. So, like Lord of the Rings, if they redid that film, better than the Lord of the Rings, I love if you get the extended version, you have all those discs of behind the
oh, I've seen
scenes.
them all. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I almost enjoy those more than the film because the
Yeah.
work and the attention to detail. I feel like AI, maybe they can replicate it, but I feel like we wouldn't connect to it the same. So I
The
love, Dean, I
soul is
love
out of
your
it. It's
answer.
sucked out of
Yeah,
The
it.
I love your
soul.
answer at that because I think everybody out there is kind of grappling with how much do we allow it to help us? How much do we put into our work, and does it take away from our own creativity? So I love that. I'm going to remember that to look at it as really just a tool as an assistant, but the story behind it has to be human, come from human. I have a quick a
Hmm.
question here. Um, you mentioned the spirituality of things, and I know that psionics and telepathy, and it's actually a big theme at Contact in the Desert this year.
Yeah.
Have you given into what are your thoughts about the I guess the manifestation of the phenomenon, and are we like in a simulation? Have you thought about that, and what are your views on that?
I interviewed in the first film, The Alien Perspective, I interviewed the guy who created the simulation reality hypothesis. and that's Dr. Nick Bostrom out of Oxford.
Okay.
And he was doubling down and saying they are aliens. They're not us. They're aliens that would create this thing if there is a matrix. And he referred to them. He says, I'm not figuratively, I'm saying they blatantly would be aliens. Anything is possible. I don't, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Dave Foley and I were talking about this, and he was getting really jacked up by the idea that we're in a matrix. And I thought, well, it's in the matrix, you have Joey Pantalone, who's talking about, I know that this steak intellectually is not real. I know that this wine isn't real, but damn, it tastes good. I'm enjoying it. Yeah. And so I because I've got a child, I refuse to believe that I'm in a matrix and this child doesn't exist. It doesn't affect what I'm doing either way. But when I hear about, and there's, everyone comes up with a new theory every week. You'll see, here's a new proof that we are in a matrix, or here's a proof that we could never be in a matrix. I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Does it affect us? What are we going to do? All kill ourselves? I mean, there's no way to get out of this matrix, really. And then, because then you're going to be reincarnated. So that's part of the matrix too. So kudos on the matrix for creating something. I think that it's a term that we haven't come up with yet, right?
Yeah.
It's like new physics. When I hear all of these scientists talk about, oh, well, that doesn't exist because this and that physics, I'm like, dude, do you know how many times that's been said in history? This can't exist because of this physics. And then we discover a workaround, So I just, that's my not quick answer to your quick question.
I think it's also like a totality of, well, here's what we know right now in 2026 as a progressing species. This is all there is. Anything else must be, you know what I mean? We've always had that same mentality. Like we
Baseline.
thought that the, somewhat around the earth, like we were
Yeah.
ignorant and we stated it as this is all there is. And we keep doing that. It's no different now. We have the same mindset as we did back in the medieval days. We just have better weapons to kill people, but it's the same mentality. It has not changed. And we keep hearing about consciousness, and you were mentioning about the source and the one in the world. Maybe we need to just consciously be aware that we are here just playing these avatars, that there's a purpose for what you do. And then sometimes, even though you don't intend to end up somewhere like yourself, you get nudged unwillingly into a direction because you're needed there. And I think that's kind of cool because in this field, there are those little synchronicities, I guess, or synchronicities.
Synchronicities, yeah.
Like French just came out there. But it does happen. And when you're like, oh, wait a minute, you look back at something like that, that's so weird. Like, how did this happen after I thought it? And then it happened, there's just weird stuff. My last question to you, Dina, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
What is the responsibility of filmmakers, journalists, and podcasts when it comes down to this subject? We've seen so many people, like you mentioned, chase the dragon, chase sensationalism, come out with stuff that is like quasi not real. You know what I mean? It's just, it's weird what people do to try to remain in the limelight that is, I guess, UFO-tainment right now. But it seems like there's not an ethic or a code as to what people should be doing. And it's a free for all as far as I'm concerned. But shouldn't we be, like you mention this all the time, regulating ourselves or keeping ourselves accountable for the things that we put out there when we have, a following? Like, are we responsible? And what do you think that would look like?
Yeah. Anything can be co-opted into a business situation. And we all know the players who do this. The best way to look at them, I guess we call them carpetbaggers, who are just going in and they've got their brand. And it's a constant battle because you want to be able to get attention, and sometimes yourself is the best branding. Like Mike Wallace when he was around, 60 Minutes, or Walter Cronkite. That was a brand of integrity. I was at Phenomicon, and I'm in the green room, and I'm hanging out with George Tsoukalos, And he hears I'm talking to someone about the films that I've been doing who was asking me about them. And he goes, Jesus, you've been at this a long time. How come I've never heard of you? How come I don't know you? He said. And I, as a joke, half joke, I said, because I don't put myself in my documentaries. I don't have a branding, so I don't look familiar. And I only started releasing, except for the McPherson tape, only started releasing all the docs I've been working on for almost a decade last January, the year before this. So 2025 is the first time that I've been really out there doing this. And like I said, when I'm done, I'm done. If I don't have anything to say, I'm not going up to the microphone. Let other people grab it, and so I feel like the responsibility for us is, man, it's tough because, like, in my second documentary, Life Beyond Earth, I take down one of these guys who's no longer with us. But I remember being young and following this guy and thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. And then as I got older, it didn't seem to make sense. And then I got photographic proof that this guy was full of crap. And I went ahead and I showed it. And it's not debatable. This guy was full of it. And a lot of people knew already, but this was it. And so, when I showed it at Contact in the Desert, there was a faction of people, because I said, I'm really sorry that I took down this, this UFO guru. And they said, no, thank you for doing that, because it takes it off our plate, which was the main reason to do that, and to show there are bad characters in here. And second of all, it shows the level of trust that I go, okay, I can trust that this guy, is going to, and these filmmakers, because it's not just me, is doing that. And so, and there are other filmmakers that are out there that are doing the same thing, but it's really, Darcy Weir did a documentary on Corey Goode. It's, some of us are having to kind of say, hey, guys, take a look at this, because everyone at some point loses sight of the ball. And what is the ball? That's the big question. And the prize is that we have an understanding of these visitors. And to sensationalize it again and to make it into demons and this and that, it's irrelevant. What is your own experience? If you talk to people, if you ever go to a support group, you're going to see these people are just trying to process all this. They're good people. And what's going on? And I did a poll. There were 20 people in a room. And I said to them, please raise your hands. How many of you, if you could go back and not have had this experience and not have been taken and had these terrifying experiences? And again, they suffer legitimately from PTSD. Show me sign of hands of how many people would like to undo that if you could. Guess how many hands went up? None.
Yeah, we often hear that it starts out as a scary experience because you don't understand what's happening, you're being taken, and then ultimately it turns into a very spiritual awakening or a spiritual path. So I've heard that time and time again. I know Jason has, and I'm sure you have too, Dean, with all the documentaries you've had. So yes.
Yeah, I like to give the example of ontological shock. And so that gets used as a branding for, what Mac pretty much coined. It had been around beforehand, but he applied it to this. So it's used with aliens, but let's back off that. Let's imagine that you're on your deck and you're just chilling. It's right in the middle of the afternoon, right? And you look over at the other end of the deck and a chimpanzee pokes its head around, looks at you, and goes back around the corner. How jacked up are you going to be that this thing that is such an extreme example of something out of context just popped up? You're going to be going, did I see that? No, I must have hallucinated. That can't be. It is going to now take that same thing. And now imagine a great alien pops his head through, looks at you, and goes back. So it's out of context. It's things that should not coexist together. It's a mind screw. And so the relationship with the beings and the transition from being able to normalize this, it's like if I went to someone, and I did when I was at my first UFO support group, there was a major in the Army, like 6'5", big guy. And he was talking about, he says, I'm new to this, and I've made peace with this. I've started to, but I think all of you guys, because he saw me do the poll, are nuts. That all of you guys would not, want to like trash this and get rid of this like that. And he was getting really irate. And then he dropped this. He said, the reason why I'm so pissed off about this and why I think you guys are kind of nuts is they can take me and they can do whatever they want to with me. I don't have control over that. But 4 months ago, my 2 little daughters came to me with a little drawing. And I looked at it and it didn't seem right. And I said, sweetie, what is this? And one of his daughters said, oh, this is what, Susie and I see when the skeleton men come and visit us. And so now he was like, you can take me, you don't touch my kids. Yeah. And so it was Papa going off the deep end. I would be the same way. I don't know anyone who wouldn't. So he's not quite there, and wasn't able to get there. He actually passed away. But it's this transition, this thing that has to happen. But it does happen to people who have been at this long enough and been experiencers, as they ultimately look at it as, I'm lucky, whether they're the chosen one or not. They feel like they're lucky to be able to have this communion.
Yeah, it might be just that no matter how crappy their lives may be, how ordinary they feel, day-to-day mundaneness, but somehow every once in a while something from somewhere unexplainable to them is interested in them enough to come and grab them and bring them back home.
Yeah.
And that is really when we're saying, well, that's a shock. Well, it is. But the nice thing is they don't throw us out the airlocks when they're done with their medical exams like we most likely would when we start going to other places. You think we're going to save so much gas by not having to return them back home? You know what I mean? Just leave them in their own atmosphere and just whatever. But they don't do that. There's a sense of compassion to them when they show up when the people are young. It's like a friend come and visit you in the middle of the night. Like they come in all, and you're happy to see them. You kind of know them now, right? And then that changes obviously through puberty when it becomes a little bit more traumatic and sexual in nature in the experiments. But again, the fact that these crafts all have a medical examination room with the table that fits a human, with things that come out of walls and devices that are meant to do this to humans, means that it's a big operation. And we should be flattered because so far it looks, it's most of us come back, which is great. I appreciate you for coming on. And the more that I get to know you, the more like you're men after our own hearts, because you want to call out the grifters. You've never been a grifter. It has been proven through history. Nobody could ever accuse you of that. And technically, you're like the first AI deepfake, not AI, but first deepfake in ufology, when it comes down to that video tape of the McPhersons. And again, that taught us so much. And it might seem so minimal in the scope of things, but it did teach us a lot about ourselves and, credibility. And no matter how much we want to believe that it could fool colonels and UFO researchers into thinking this is real. And it humbles us because it's like, okay, well, sometimes trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've been at this for a while now. It's like, that's not the way it works. And I appreciate that. That's very humble of you. Katie, we're going to be back. I believe our sixth anniversary episode will be coming out hopefully by March 30th. And that will be with James Fox, the director, filmmaker. We got kind of a filmmaker thing. We just had Darcy Weir on, so we kind of have a documentary filmmaker thing going on. Yeah, exactly. This is great. We're learning about film. But again, Dean, we appreciate your time. Look forward to hanging out with you at Contact in the Desert and seeing this new premiere that's coming out. And again, thank you so much for doing what you do and keep rocking it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate being on your guys' show where you are asking fantastic questions that are kind of trying to look not just beneath the hood, underneath the hood, but also what's the purpose of the car in and of itself. Those are the questions we need to be asking. So thank you. I've enjoyed this. I'm also, if you guys wanted to have links, I should say this, the business part of this. If people go to alienperspectivemovie.com, they can get links that'll go to not only information about these films and who's involved, but links to actually see the films and go to it. So,
and you have a website
anyway,
as well.
that's the website. It's
it is on a website.
called, yeah, alienperspectivemovie.com. And I'm on social media. I'm on Instagram and stuff like that under my name, Dean Alioto.
Man, we
My real
appreciate
name,
your time.
not the
Your
one
real
that,
name.
I can't wait to watch it.
Not the alias name.
Not the alias, right?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys. Peace.